Good morning, everybody. This is Mike Pingpank. I am the AHP manager here at the Federal Home Loan Bank. This is the 2026 Affordable Housing Program Scoring webinar. The audience today, it's really geared towards sponsors and members. For those of you who are interested in participating in our 2026 AHP round, I'm going to be joined today by Kathleen Amante, Toby Goldberg, and Milton Baptista. They are our community investment managers. And between the four of us, we've carved up all of New England and beyond to to help everybody with their projects, both through the application and beyond. We'll go through that a little bit in terms of how the territory is broken out in a second. But for today, I just want to quickly talk through our agenda. We're going to just quickly talk about, again, the bank mission and the team. We're going to do a quick overview of the AHP changes in 2026, and then get into the meat of the scoring discussion. So we'll talk about points, documentation, key points where folks have errors that we can hopefully avoid, and some challenges with the access to the application via the community lending portal, and just some key reminders. And then we hope to have time at the end for some Q&A. We can have folks either type in questions as they come up and we'll answer them, or you can raise your hand and we can open up your mic. This session is going to be recorded. We hope to have it up on our YouTube channel pretty soon. It takes a little bit of time to edit it and get it up there, but we'll do our best to get it in there as soon as possible. Just a reminder too that on Thursday we have our feasibility webinar. So that goes hand in hand with this. We'll talk about the other half of the application on Thursday. So for those of you who don't know, aren't familiar with the Federal Home Loan Bank, we are a bank for banks. We are the wholesale lender to the majority of banks and credit unions and insurance companies throughout New England. We provide reliable wholesale funding and liquidity to those banks and other financial institutions. We also provide services and different financial products and expertise. But part of our mission, we have a dual mission. So not only is it the liquidity function, but we focus on housing and community investment. And a big portion of what we do is putting our funding towards various programs. Some are statutory that we're required to offer, like the AHP and the Equity Builder program, and others are voluntary that our board has decided to add over the years as a way to enhance our statutory offerings to give a more well-rounded picture. I can quickly just run through them. We have our newest program this year. It's a disaster recovery program. We love that it's here. We hope to never use it. It'll get activated in the event that we have a declared disaster in New England, and it's to provide short-term mortgage assistance to affected homeowners and businesses. We also have the AHP program, of course, which is what we're talking about today. We have the CDA program, which is a tremendous tool of discounted funding. Billions of dollars have been lent through that. And then we have our suite of homeownership programs, Equity Builder, Housing Our Workforce, and Lift Up. And then we have Jobs for New England, which is a small business lending program, and CDFI advances. Both J&E and CDFI pass through 0% funding to members who then turn around and can make a below market rate loan to either small businesses or CDFIs in the region. And to round out the opening discussion here, I just want to quickly introduce you to our team. As I mentioned, Kathleen, Milton, Toby, and I are on the call today. We are your AHP team. We've carved up the territory. Toby has Maine and Essex County and Mass. Milton has New Hampshire, Western, Central, and Eastern Mass, and Kathleen has Connecticut, Rhode Island, Southeastern Mass, and all of the projects that come to us from our members who have a lending footprint outside of New England. And I have all of the Vermont projects. So you'll hear from all of us today. Please feel free to send in questions. If we don't respond to your question right away, it's probably because we're going to get to it later in the presentation, but we'll be monitoring throughout the morning and encourage you to send them in, and we'll try to get to everybody. As a reminder, like I said, this will be recorded though, and we hope to have that link out to everybody in maybe another week. And with that, I think I'm turning it over to, is it Kathleen taking over now?
Yes, Mike, it is. Good morning, everyone. So we're going to go over the changes and the overview of the program for 2026. So first of all, what AHP can be used for. So as you know, we have a chronic shortage in housing production, especially home ownership production for first-time home buyers, buyers of color, or generational home buyers, which has created a long-standing income and wealth gaps. So AHP is flexible capital. Members and sponsors use AHP to fill capital gaps for all types of housing development, which have all or a portion of their units targeted to households with incomes at or below 80% AMI. AHP does prioritize serving more households earning 50% or less of the area median income. And this list here is illustrative of the many successful ways members and sponsors use AHP in their communities. So for 2026, we have a $26 million allocation for the round. We have made a change in how the subsidy is awarded. So this year we have increased the grant or overall application subsidy to $1 million. In the past, we have bifurcated the subsidy available to a project by grant and then another pot of funding available to use for our subsidized advances. This year, we have taken away that bifurcation, and it's just $1 million across the board for an application that a sponsor and member can discuss using in various different ways. You can access it straight $1 million as a direct grant into the project, or you can carve it up any way that supports your project the best. So you can use part of the funding to support a subsidized advance, which would lower the interest rate to the project. So again, it all depends on what works for your project. We're also excited to announce that we have increased the homeownership subsidy per unit to $100,000, so a little bump up from 2025. We also want to remind sponsors and members that if you're working with maybe a larger member that's going to support multiple AHP applications, please have the conversation with them about how many they might be supporting this year, as we do have a cap of 25% of the subsidy awarded in a round per member. So no member can take more than 25% of the funding available. That's approximately $6.5 million this year. So just an important conversation to have with your sponsor to make sure that you aren't going to be impacted if they are supporting multiple applications. So the important details. So the application is going to open up on June 1st, and that's going to close on July 16th at 3 p.m. This is a hard stop. The system shuts down at 3 p.m. So my word of advice is to always make the deadline ahead of the 16th. Don't work to that actual deadline, because if there's any issues on your end as far as system issues, there's nothing we can do once 3 o'clock comes, because the system is just going to shut down. So try not to work to the deadline. Make sure you're talking with your member. Make sure that if you have vacations coming up, that there's conversations going on. We know this is happening over the summer period, so we just want to make sure that everybody is in place and able to sign and submit in the times when they're supposed to. Another important thing to note is that before July 16th at 3 p.m., if you sign it over to your member and they spot a discrepancy or an error in your application, they can sign it back to you and you can go in and fix or adjust what needs to be adjusted. Come July 16th at 3 o'clock, it cannot be signed back to you. So it's just another tool. If you sign it and submit it to your member early, in case there's something wrong, they can send it back to you, because this is a highly competitive program. The member is then going to have an additional 2 weeks to review your application and to sign and submit it themselves. They are going to be putting in some underwriting information and things like that and validating that any investments or lending they're going to do on the project is correct to their understanding. So they also have a 3 p.m. deadline on July 30th where the system will shut down. And again, make sure if someone's going to be on vacation that it's understood the application due dates and that you work out those details before it becomes an issue. The funding awards will be announced by December 24th. They're announced after our board of directors approves the package. And just a reminder, Mike did mention the feasibility training is happening on Thursday. You can still sign into that. Go to our website, go to the events section and sign up for that webinar. And we also want to let you know that if you do not have your logins for community lending, as this application is done completely online, make sure that you're going to the website and getting your credentials established. So some key points for AHP. Again, this is a direct grant or interest rate subsidy. The subsidized advance will subsidize permanent debt on rentals only. And we also want to remind you that AHP is considered a gap funder. So we're here to help plug, a hole that you may have, a small hole you may have in your development budget. Again, competitive, everything is done online. The 2026 AHP implementation plan, which is our policy document that goes through all of our scoring criteria, all the monitoring requirements, and the feasibility, is available on our website. It has also been placed in the chat. So if you want to download that, have that handy for you when you're going through the application process, because we as community investment managers, we have it open and available to us. We review it. We look to it all the time when we're reviewing your applications. If you call us with a question, that's the first place we're going to. So we know that you're not working on these between 9 and 5 every day. You might be working on it late at night sometime. That implementation plan is going to help guide you with questions that you may have. On our website, there's also our 2026 notice of changes. So if you wanted to see the highlights on what we've changed in the program for this year, that is available on our website. And we also want to remind you that this is a regulated program, and there's a reference right there to the regulation in which we follow for this program. So fraud reporting. Again, all members and sponsors are responsible for reporting to us anything that they observe related to an approved AHP application or initiative. If you see something, say something to us. Just want to remind everybody their responsibility for this. And the fraud could be intentional or unintentional. And to please provide us, give us a call or definitely provide us some written notice if you notice anything going on. So some examples of fraud that we have is wording changes in AHP documents or fraudulent documents, an undisclosed conflict of interest. Also, any falsifying any information or financial statements, and failure to notify the bank if there's a sale, refi, or foreclosure on the initiative that has AHP funding. So if there's any large changes that go on in a project after you've been awarded, you just please make sure you let us know about what's going on. So again, AHP is flexible capital subsidy. You can use it for acquisition, construction, the rehabilitation costs, and also your soft costs on the project. Things that it cannot be used for is the non-residential space, your reserves, supportive housing, supporting services, or any of your operating costs. It's also not eligible to be used for non-residential items like furniture, bank fees, things of that nature. And AHP also cannot be used for pre-development funding. Refinancing of an existing single or multifamily mortgage loan is permitted. There is a formula in there. It has to generate some proceeds. So if you're thinking about using this program for a refi, get in touch with your community investment manager or Mike, and we can walk through it with you. So some of the core components, the program eligibility. So AHP will support any household up to 80% AMI. You are allowed to have a mixed income initiative. However, AHP will only fund those units up to 80% AMI, and this is part of our regulation. We're also going to be looking at sponsor capacity. Have you developed or maintained this type of housing in the past? If you have not, we will be working with you and talking to you about getting either a co-sponsor to help you through the process or an experienced development consultant. So if you've never developed housing before, this is definitely an area in which we will be encouraging you and working with you to get a co-sponsor and or development consultant on your application. It will help you in the long run. Again, as this is a regulated program, it helps to have someone in your corner that has done this before. We're going to be looking at your housing development costs and your development timeline. We have made an extension to our timeline for this program. The initiative used to have to be completed within 36 months. Since the pandemic, we've noticed timelines have slipped, and we have changed that to 48 months to help accommodate projects and to not have them on our delayed completion watch list. So that development timeline has changed. We do expect projects to have all funding and be ready to go at 12 months. If they are not, there is a potential for an extension of an additional 6 months if you are, waiting for an application decision and things like that. But typically, we want you ready to go by 12 months and complete within 48 months. We are also going to be looking at the feasibility of the project and the operations of the project, and we'll go into that more detail in our webinar on Thursday. And we're also going to be looking for your need for subsidy. Are we filling that gap? Is there a gap in your development pro forma without the AHP funding? And again, the all important scoring, again, highly competitive. You have to score in order to receive the funding. So the steps to complete your application. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to do your sponsor registration. So again, everything hinges on that community lending login. You're going to log in and you're going to start your sponsor registration. And then you're going to invite the member. So the member sponsoring your application is the key for you to get into the application. So you will do this on the community lending portal. You will invite your member. There'll be a drop down menu for you to use. And that member will accept your invitation, and that will open up the application for you. So once they've accepted the invite, the application will be available for you. You'll start entering your information. And again, you need to sign it by July 16th at 3 p.m. and the members will have until July 30th at 3 p.m. And now I am going to be handing the presentation off to Toby Goldberg.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathleen. So I am going to walk you through scoring and through filling out the first part of the AHP application. Talking about scoring, Kathleen mentioned how competitive AHP is. And when we say competitive, what we want you to think about is maximizing the points your project can get in a way that fits your project. Because everything that you request in terms of these 13 scoring categories are going to live with you for the life of the project. So make sure as you're selecting these categories that they make sense to your project and to what your plan is for going forward. So these are the categories. You see that they're fixed points as well as variable points. On the variable points, you can get some or all of the points. We have a total of 118 points. Don't worry, you're not going to get all of them. It's designed so that some of these points work well for rural projects, some of these work well for homeownership projects, and we love this sort of like the various ways in which you can score points because it means we're able to participate in a range of projects, as Kathleen mentioned earlier. And these scoring categories really ensure that we continue to fund a broad range of affordable housing types and mixed income, rental housing, as well as ownership housing. So next slide. Okay. So some of the things that you're going to need as you prepare to get your application together is you're going to need a fair housing and marketing plan. You're going to need to demonstrate site control. And if you've acquired the project or you know what your acquisition price will be, hopefully, you will need that as you get into your application. Make sure you're using the current templates. They're on our website for empowerment. We now just have a sponsorship and an agency template. There's no more resident services template, so you're going to be either using sponsor or agency. If your organization is providing the service, you'll use a sponsor template. If you're partnering with someone to provide that service, then you're going to be using the agency template, and that's really very much more straightforward. Take a look at before you even start your application, take a look at the implementation plan. Look carefully at the scoring criteria and what you'll need to verify the points that you're requesting. We need documentation for each one of the things that you're asking for, and the application will lead you through it. It's always helpful to have that information available to you at the front end. We've made some changes to community stability. We'll get into those changes sort of down the road. But one of the things I do want to bring your attention to is we've made some changes to relocation, and that impacts community stability, right? So if you are moving your residents from where they are, even if it's just for a day, a short-term relocation, you need to provide us with a rent roll. And the reason is because many of those residents, if not all of those residents, are going to be living your project when your project's complete. And we need to make sure that the residents' current income eligibility is consistent with what you're asking for in the application. We have a built-in module that allows you to fill in your rent roll. So make sure you have that information before you start your application. So the first category that you're going to be making decisions about as you start your application is when you do your registration, it's going to ask you, are you a nonprofit or a for-profit? Do you have a 501c3? Are you a government entity? If you are, then you can apply, you can request those nonprofit points. You're going to need to provide documentation on the type of organization you are. Look to the implementation plan for the specifics. If you're not a 501(c)(3), we're probably going to want your articles of organization. As a sponsor, if you have an ownership interest in the project as a for a rental project, you are eligible for the first point. If you have a long-term financial involvement, whether you're a government entity or nonprofit organization, you are eligible for all 5 points. Excuse me. If you're applying for a homeownership project, if you have integral involvement in the development process, if you have site control, integral involvement, if you're involved in selecting the income eligible home buyers or qualifying the home buyers, then you're eligible for those 5 points. Next slide. It's really important, and I encourage all of you, take a read through it. We're doing things at a very high level today, but make sure you have all of this information available to you for when you start your application. So the location screen is probably the most important screen other than your organization information that you enter into the application. You're going to enter the address or addresses of the project you're going to be developed. It's going to prompt you to indicate whether to look up the MSA, the tract income, all of this location related information, the number of buildings, um, whether it's a high rise, a low rise, a townhome, or a single family, is going to impact how this project is set up in our system. You want to enter it all correctly the first time. You want to know your targeting, where it's located, if it's multiple units, multiple addresses, what that looks like. And so that's really the importance of the screen and the importance of the locations tab. Because if you go back and make changes to that tab, it's going to mess up everything else in your application. Our application is set up to build on each other. So make sure you have this information before you even start the application. If you don't have everything, save and come back to it. Maybe start to organize some of the other pieces, but make sure you have this because it's going to select rural, whether you get in district, as well as the type of project is going to impact the construction costs that you're later going to have to respond to in the feasibility section. So some tips and tricks. Most of the rental projects are going to be other multifamily. If you're building like single family rental projects, okay, then it's not multifamily. It'll be a single family. But if you look through the drop down, you're saying, what am I? I don't fit into these other types. Your other multifamily. You're going to enter your address into the FFIEC link. The newest one is 2026. Enter that information. It's going to give you the census tract. And from there, you're going to pick out the type of buildings. And again, as I mentioned, this information is critical because it impacts how your application gets set up down the road. And you'll see it builds on each other. And if you go back and change from 7 Smith Street to 8 Jones Road, you're going to mess up everything and really have to start all over again. This location is going to dictate, like I said, your construction costs. We use our S means as our benchmark. If you're over, we're looking for an explanation. Again, it's a benchmark. It's not a hard and fast rule. So the location is also going to ask you acquisition costs. Do you have that information with you? How much is this project going to cost compared to how much is it valued for? If you're looking for donated, then the transaction needs to be arm's length. You can't donate it to yourself or a related entity. It has to be separate legal structures. And if you have a question as to whether your transaction is, check with your community investment manager. To be valid, donations have to be made within 5 years. And you can have no prior benefit. You can't have used that space for office space and now you're going to convert it to housing. To get any points, at least 20% of the units or the land have to be donated. If you're getting it for a dollar or $100 and the thing's worth much more, obviously that's a donation. If it's not a nominal amount, you're going to need to provide us with documentation that shows that at least 20% is being donated with either an appraisal or a local assessor's card. You'll get a percentage of the 5 points based on the amount that's being donated. And that's really units or square footage, either of the building or the lot, depending on how your site is laid out. Side. So we talked about evidence of donation. That's a deed. That's a purchase and sale that clearly states what the transfer cost is going to be. And you're going to need a tax assessor's card or an appraisal if one's been done. If the donation has already been completed and no appraisal is ordered, we'll take an assessor's card based at the time the transfer occurred. If it hasn't occurred, then we're going to need something that confirms that's what the transfer cost is going to be. That's what the acquisition cost will be. Maybe in your purchase and sale, it says to be transferred at $1 or at whatever the value is. And we will be reconfirming that prior to dispersing your funds if you're awarded. Next slide. So another thing that you must have in order to begin your HP application is site control. It doesn't mean you have to have closed on the acquisition, but it does mean you have to have an option, an executed purchase and sale agreement, maybe a resolution from the local municipality who's transferring the property to you. We need to establish a clear line of sight between you and the ownership of the project. If the documentation you have is in a name that's different from your organizational legal name and the name that you're applying under, then you need to provide us with an explanation of how you're all related. And maybe it's a co-sponsor that's bringing site control to the project, then you need to just sort of walk us through it and make it really easy for someone who is not familiar with your project and not familiar with your organization to understand how you have site control. The biggest challenge we often have is just sort of understanding the chain of how you have control. So make that really, really clear to us, make it simple, make it straightforward, and provide us with the documentation we need so that there's no question in our minds that you have control of this site that you're applying to build a project on. Next slide. So we talked about how this documentation is important, site control and acquisition, knowing what the agreed upon purchase price is, and knowing what the project is appraised for. And that's really going to determine the piece of donation or the points that you're eligible for in donation. One of the things we've been asked to break out over the years is what are your acquisition costs and what are those comprised of? If you're including carrying costs in your acquisition number and your budget, then we need to understand what those carrying costs are, and they can't go back more than 5 years prior to purchase. Excuse me. If there's other costs, if you're carrying um, title costs or legal costs or whatever it is, or maybe it's taxes that you've been paying on the property as part of the carrying costs, we just need to understand what that detail is so that we're clearly putting everything in the same bucket that you are, and we're understanding the full how you're viewing acquisition. And if it's super complicated or a little convoluted, then reach out to us and figure out how you can make it clear and smooth for us to award you A, to understand you have site control, and B, understand what the costs are associated with that property. So this year we've changed up a little bit in terms of points that we're awarding for underserved communities and populations. We've added 2 categories. If you're providing housing for formerly incarcerated persons, or if you're providing housing for Native American households on or off tribal land, you're eligible for you're eligible for those 3.5 points. In either case, the formerly incarcerated persons or the Native American households need to make up 20% of the total population of your total number of units in your project in order to receive those points. For formerly incarcerated, you will be looking for a supportive service plan. And for the Native American communities, the documentation that we're looking for is listed in here and in the implementation plan. We're really excited about those changes, and we hope that we get to see some of that special population being served as part of our AHP portfolio. So member financial participation, changing gears, member financial participation is a really important part of the AHP process. Our members are our fiduciary, and we reward them for participating in these projects with you. If your member financial institution is providing construction financing that's equal to or greater than the amount of subsidy you're requesting, part of that $1 million, you're eligible for up to 4 points. If your member financial institution is going to be providing long-term debt or making a LIHTC investment, you'd be eligible for the additional 2 points. If your member is making a portion of those first 4 points or first short-term involvement, or even a small long-term investment that's smaller than the amount of AHP or subsidy you're requesting in terms of subsidy, you're eligible for a portion of those points based on the proportion of their involvement. So how do you enter the information into the application? Keep in mind that this continues to build on itself. So when you're entering your capital stack, you're going to start with um, member funding, and that includes your AHP grant, an AHP subsidized advance, construction or permanent financing that your member is providing. So you need to have all of your financing, all of your budgets lined up to start the application. It's easy. I know that budgets change during the course of the project. Pick a point, pick one point in time, and that's the point you're going to stick with throughout this entire application. Things may move in sort of your real world, but in terms of your application, this is the point in time that you're submitting your application and you're building the information in your application. So this is the first information that you're going to enter, and then you're going to add your additional sources after you enter HP and member funding. Here's what it'll look like. You can edit these fields. You'll need to know the origination form, the origination fees, the term and amortization of the loans. You need to have those conversations now with your member to really sort of nail down what it is you're trying to do. Once the application opens, if you're thinking about doing a subsidized advance, especially that's only available to rental projects, the application is going to calculate the amount of subsidy that you'll need to get to the rate that you need for your project. And so you're going to have to figure out what is the member spread, back that down to, in this case, the sponsor's looking for 3.5. The member's taking 250 basis point spread. So you're going to need to calculate that loan at 1% to the member. And I think that's sort of a good way to think about it, is like, really, what is the end rate that your project can support? And then you're going to need to back down, and that's the amount of subsidy you're going to need to make that advance work. Now, if your project's awarded, that's the amount of advance interest subsidy that we're going to reserve for your project. Rates may be are subject to change, right? They will change over time, but that's the amount of subsidy that we've reserved, and we've baked in a future. Our desk has given us a future indication for like 18 months out. It's an indication. If you need more subsidy at the time you're getting ready to close your project, you can move some of your direct subsidy over and increase your interest subsidy. or you may decide that maybe that isn't the best way to go, but we will reserve that subsidy for you in your initial application. And you see also where to enter a construction loan, um, and if the member is providing an equity investment. So it it looks exactly like you see on the screen, and you need information for all of those fields in order to proceed forward. If you're doing a subsidized advance, if you're not doing a subsidized advance, and you're really just going to focus on the other fields. Subsidy per unit. We have so many conversations. Everybody's trying to buy for the most points. It's a 5-point category. It's variable. Our best advice to you is ask for the amount of subsidy you need. The range for rental projects to get points is from 5,000 to 65,000 per unit. On owner, as Kathleen mentioned, you can go up to 100,000. There's a minimum of 25,000 in order that we're looking for per application. The less subsidy per unit, the higher number of points. You know, some of you say, well, I have a small project. This is then ask for what you need. You're doing a lot of work to get our money. Ask for, if you need the full million, ask for the full million, and then try and make it up in another category like empowerment or community stability. But you want to fill your gap. You don't want to add more layers to your capital stock stack if you can help it, right? Next slide. So we mentioned that some points favor rental projects, some first-time home buyer. There's 7 points for ownership housing if all of your owners are first-time home buyers. This is typically new construction, substantial rehabilitation. To get these points, you must have a home buyer counseling component. To figure out the amount of points you're eligible for, it's a multiplier of 7 times the percentage of first-time owners who are going to be taking part in your project. If you're doing rehab, we look for a minimum of $25,000. And like we mentioned, you can get up to $100,000 per unit. So select the amount of subsidy that makes the most sense for your project. We know how tough these ownership deals are to do. Here's an area where if you're serving all first-time homebuyers, you can get up to $100,000 per unit and still get 7 points. Next slide. And finally, actually, this is the slide I believe I am turning things over to Milton.
Yes,
And he'll
indeed.
lead you through targeting the rest of the scoring categories.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Toby. That was great information. I'll be taking it from here, folks. So, continuing on with the scoring categories, I'll be picking it up from targeting for rental projects. So, as you can see here, we look for 20% of the total units to be targeted at 50% AMI or below. And as you can see on the points multiplier in the chart below, we give more points to units that are targeted at lower AMIs. So as you can see in the top example, we have a total of 10 units, and you can see that the number of units at 50% AMI actually score with a higher, we give them a higher weighted score for the targeting. So those 2 units at 50% AMI, we take the 20%, multiply it by 20, and then boom, 4 points. Same thing with the 8 units. We multiply it at 14 and then It's 80% of the units, and so it came out to 11.2 points for a total of 15.20 points for the targeting. Now, for most projects that we see a lot that have more at 50% AMI, and so we we give more priority and points to the ones that have a higher amount of units at 50% AMI. Next slide, please. Now, the way it works for home ownership is also on a scale of 20 points total, and all of the units must be affordable for households earning at or below 80% of the median area income. So as you can see here, same thing with the points multiplier. This is another example of 10 points where you see that the 4 units at 60% AMI have scored more than the 6 units at 60% AMI. And you see the points multiplier is there at 20 for both 50% and 60% AMI, and at 18 for the 6 units at 80%. So what we're doing here again is we're prioritizing the more affordability that you have in your project, the higher points you get for targeting. Next slide, please. Now, for housing for homeless, we have a minimum of a 20% set aside for you to earn the points for this category. Now, the minimum of the 20% will get you 4 points, and it'll be between 20 to 24.99% of the total units will get you the 4 points. And then once you get to 25% or more that are set aside for homeless, then you get the full 6 points. Now, the units must be dedicated for homeless. You will need to provide third-party certification. And it's not the best intention or just for Section 8 preference. And in 2026, the new construction prerequisite has been removed. And Toby mentioned this before. You do need documentation for everything that you're asking for. And so this is one of those categories where we pay attention to that. And we want your documentation to be good to go with the third party certification. Next slide, please. Now on to empowerment. Empowerment, you can earn a maximum of 6 points. And so we give 1.5 points per service. So the services must be available to all of the residents and lead to economic empowerment of the residents. You will need the sponsor's letter of commitment or the agency's letter of commitment. And if you do not use our template, then you will not get points for this category. And one of the things that I want to highlight here is that for each category here, you see workforce readiness and employment opportunities, home ownership and economic stability, healthcare and general resident services, and resident involvement in decision making. Now, under each of these 4 categories, we have subcategories. So you can go and focus on workforce readiness and employment opportunities where um, you have you can be providing a service to people who are looking for jobs, and you can also be providing a service for folks who want to get their high school equivalency, and yeah, multiple categories under each of these 6. So 1.5 points per service. Next slide, please. Now, with community stability, you have a maximum of up to 18 points, but for rental initiatives, we give a maximum of 15 points. And I'll explain the difference in one of the upcoming slides. But to touch on them here, we have preservation and reuse in the revolving loan fund, which gets you up to 6%, which gets you up to 6 points. Sorry. We have smart growth, which gets you up to 3 points, and these include housing density and transportation services. Um, Fairly easy to get these points, but also people do miss the mark sometimes because of the documentation. And then we have sustainability and resiliency up to another 6 points. So that is inclusive of efficient and healthy building operations. Next slide. So expanding on the preservation revolving loan fund or reuse and the difference. So as you can see, we have 1A, 1B, and 1C. These all are counted towards uh, rental projects. And so you can include the preservation of affordable housing, which shows expiring use restrictions, some property that has physical distress or is facing foreclosure, documentation of affordability restriction is required, and we want to see the documentation as well for either the distress or foreclosure. When it comes to the revolving loan fund, these are for owner-occupied housing, and these are program-based serving owner-occupied housing. The reuse of existing buildings or historic rehab. So adaptive reuse has become very popular over the past few years. We see a lot of projects also with historic preservation that need extensive rehab, and we would like to see the documentation for all of this again. Uh, the extra points for the community land trust are for home ownership projects, and you must use the template, and these are for owner occupied initiatives only. Next slide. Now, expanding on smart growth and sustainability and climate resiliency, it really comes down to how you are building the project or the elements of environmental stability, sustainability that you're going to include in the construction. So this includes Enterprise Green or LEED certifications, which gets you 9 points, Energy Star and Passive House, as well as HERS ratings of 42 or lower, each get you 6 points. Or you could use what we call the a la carte method, where you select individual elements to earn points in separate categories. Now, of the 4 paths that we have, you must choose one. Next slide, please. So here is more on our a la carte method that we use. So if you decide not to go for either the Enterprise Green, LEED certification, Energy Star, or HERS ratings, these are the elements that you can let us know that you're adding to your project. So better building envelopes, high efficiency heating and cooling, improved ventilation, total water use reduction, and vulnerability assessment and planning. Is as long as you can show us that you are going for these, then these can help you to earn up to 6 points as well in lieu of going for either Energy Star or HERS rating certification. Next slide, please. So once you get through the all of the scoring and you get past the smart growth, sustainability, and efficient and healthy building operations, you will get to the end of the application, and this is going to be your summary, your scoring summary page. And so once you get here, you will see um, the number of points that you are projected to have at the end of the scoring with all the inputs that you've made. And this will give you an indication of where you land. Next slide, please. Please do remember to sign up and register with your community login link, with our community login link. If you do forget your password or your username, please do click on where you see retrieve retrieve your username or to reset your password, and we will get you back in there to finish your application. Next slide, please. So we know that a lot of sponsors have more than one staff, or some folks may be using a consultant. And so when it comes to account management, we have account management for the sponsor to where you can have more than one contact from your organization come in and work on the project. And then we also have authorized reps, which are for folks who are from two different organizations So this would be, for example, a sponsor who is using a development consultant. You would then have an authorized rep who's able to come in and work on your application. Next slide, please. And just a few reminders here. You're going to use the scoring page to proof yourself. You're going to provide a site control in donated documentation. You will use the empowerment templates and upload your member financing and intent letters and enter the member financing data correctly in order for us to best score your application. And that is my time, and we will now open it up for questions.
All right, thanks, Milton, and thanks, Toby and Kathleen. I hope everybody got quite a bit of information out of this. We know it's kind of taking it by fire hose, but we try to get as much info out there. Just a big reminder is the entire application is it follows directly along with the implementation plan, attachment B with the scoring. So if you ever have questions, that's exactly where we're going to try to point you. If you do call us for assistance, we'll guide you through the IP to point out where the points are. But just a reminder that if you send us an email or talk to us on the phone and say, hey, am I going to get these points? We're not going to be awarding you points outside of the round, meaning like we're not going to say, yes, you can automatically get these points if you send us an email or something like that. None of, we'll help you find the answer, but it's really going to be just based on what you actually submit in the application. So I do have some questions. I'm going to go through some that were written in first, and then I know that there's a few hands raised, and we'll try to get to everybody here. So let's see here. First question was that will this be recorded? Yep, this was recorded. We'll have this posted up on our YouTube channel as soon as possible. A copy of the presentation, we can send this out, I believe, so everybody can get the links and use this as a good reference. Construction start date. Since AHP can't be used for pre-development, should we use the date of vertical construction start? So yeah, you'll use the shovel in the ground start date when actual construction starts, whether it's construction for the site or building up. Let's see, where are on the website are the 2026 forms available? It still has the 25 empowerment forms. Yeah, the empowerment forms have been left up for now because folks with older projects are using them for closeouts. The 2026 forms should be up pretty soon. If we can get them loaded onto the materials section of this presentation. I don't know if we can do it mid-presentation. We can give them to you. You can email me and I can send them out to you. We should have them up in the next few weeks, but they're in the process of getting remediated for ADA compliance before they go up on the actual website. But if anybody needs them, feel free to reach out. Kathleen, I don't know if one of the slides has our emails on it. We want to put that one up. What if it's a lease for $1? I assume this was back during the donated conversation. So the IP references nominal cost. So a lease for $1 should generally qualify, but again, it really depends on what you submit in terms of documentation and to prove that $1 is a nominal cost. Oh, I thought we did have our emails in there. Oh well. But yes, in general, a $1 lease, we would generally see that be eligible for donated scoring, provided it meets the arm's length requirements and everything like that. If you're doing a twinned 4% and 9% deal, should we submit one application with a combined budget? We see these typically come in as 2 applications. You only can put in 1 owner per application. And those 2 deals would most likely have 2 separate owner entities. technically by their name. So you would just submit twin applications. Phased projects, we want you to be sure. We're going to talk about phased projects more on Thursday. But we do have to see the specific costs carved out for each project to make sure there's no or that any overlapping is truly divided out. So we're not counting costs twice on a project. Another question about the slide deck. Yeah, we can send this out. It won't be on the website, but we'll send it out. And the presentation itself will be on YouTube. Does a certain amount of funding need to have already been committed at the time of application? No, at the time of application, what you're doing is you're giving us a budget that is well formulated to the point where you can say that within 12 months, all of your sources can be formally committed. So you have identified 100% of where your budget is coming from. You don't need to have any sort of portion of it formally committed at the time of application, but you would say like, we're going to apply if you submit this summer and you're going to apply in the fall for tax credits or something like that. You can put that in there as a pending source. If you have a committed source at the time of application, there's an option on there to submit a commitment letter. So we can just check that off and we don't have to deal with it later. But you don't have to have any of the funding, but you do need to be, in terms of our timeline, you need to be ready to be able to say that within 12 months, 18 at the far side of it, that you'd be ready to go. Approximate minimum score for an application in order to be competitive based on prior rounds. So last year, let's see, the low score I believe was a 67. The top score was a 79. So that just gives you an idea too. A C plus average is pretty good for AHP. The scores this year, I wouldn't be surprised if they're a little bit lower just based on some of the changes that we've made. And it totally depends on the competition. So we've had rounds where a 47 got funded. We've had rounds where a 68 didn't get funded or a 69 didn't get funded. So it's hard to tell year from year. And again, it really depends on the score, the level of competition out there. But don't get discouraged if you want to talk through it with us. Maybe we can help you mine for some points, that sort of thing, just to make sure that you're turning over every stone to try to find points in your application. But as Kathleen mentioned, don't go fishing for points or stretching. Like give us, or maybe Toby said this, but give us what your project is. You're going to be monitored on it at application, of course, but at disbursement and closeout. And if you can't deliver on your promises, there is a chance that we could, if we had to change your score and you fell out of the round, that we'd take our money back, and you never want that to happen. So be honest with your project and give us what it is. Let's see. Self-scoring sheet, yep, it's available online. What percentage of last year's applications were awarded? I think it was roughly 50%. But again, it just depends on the competition year to year and how much funding we have available. We have a little bit less than last year for this year. Last year, I think we awarded 49 projects, I think. Again, the range of scores last year, I think it was 67 to 79. If you're getting something far above an 80, check your scoring again. We do every once in a while, we fund like an 82 or something like that. But if you're sending us something in the high 80s, check your application again, because it's very hard to get something that high. The application is designed to be competitive based on regions and project types and everything like that. So There are certain scoring elements that you just shouldn't be eligible for based on your project, which is why, you know, very high, mid to high 70s is a great score. So if you see something very high, just check again, and make sure you're actually giving us what you intended to. For twin applications, are they restricted to the $1 million threshold, or given that they're two applications, are they each subject? Yes, each application is subject to the $1 million threshold. We wouldn't penalize you for submitting multiple applications. The only concerns there are sponsor capacity. We want to make sure that you can deliver these projects at the same time instead of one after the other, and also member participation. Keep in mind that while there is no limit on what a sponsor may request in the round based on the number of applications and the dollar value, members are limited to 25% of the total pool. So that's roughly $6.5 million is the max that any member could be awarded this year for their projects. And that is all the questions I have for the
Yeah, Mike, we do have a couple hands up. Wendy, are you able to unmute yourself? Let me see if I can. If not, you can.
Yeah, now I can. Thank you. I had a few questions. One was, is there a restriction on the date of the appraisal for the acquisition value?
Let me see. I'll have to check the IP on that and how recent we require that. I believe it's defined in there. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay. The other question, something Toby said sparked another question for me. She mentioned that if you needed more interest rate subsidy when you were actually locking in the rate on the perm loan, that you could shift from the direct grant to the interest subsidy. Is it true that you can do the opposite?
Good question. Yeah, I can't think we've ever done it that way.
Yeah, the reg doesn't let us move it back from interest subsidy to direct subsidy, unfortunately.
Okay. Then the other question I had was on donation. Are there any restrictions on who's donating the property?
Well, to get the points, it needs to be arm's length, of course. And then there are specific points called out for government entities, federal government entities donating it. But in terms of like anyone in particular, I don't think we have any sort of limitation on that as long as that you prove that it is a true arm's length donation.
Okay, thank you.
And Christian also had a question.
Yeah, hi. Sticking with the donated slide, I'm just a little confused because it says purchase for 50% or less of fair market value, but then under that it says a minimum at least 20%. So does it have to be 50% or less of fair market value or just 20%?
I'm not certain what we had on that slide. Let's go back to that if we can.
I was going to say at least 20% of the land or units need to be donated in order to get any points. And for the portion that is donated, if it's not the entire property, you'll need to be acquiring it for less than 50% of the fair market value. Does that help, Christian?
For the portion that's donated?
So if you have, say, 2 lots, and for simple ease, each one's 50% of the total project. So if you're claiming donated on one of those lots, at least 20% of that land or those units, maybe it's a rehab, so it's a 100-unit building, but it's being sold to you so that at least I'm messing myself up now. But at least like 20, there has to be at least 50%. The acquisition has to be at 50% or below of the market value, and it's 50% of your project that's being donated in that particular instance, because you've got two that are 50% each. If it's a quarter, then it's 25%, but it's more than that 20%.
I think for clarity too, I think the 20% comes into more play when you have a scattered site. So you may have, 6 different lots that you're using and not all of them are being donated, so that minimum of the 20% of the sites that are part of your project need to be donated in order to qualify for the points. And then the further qualification is purchase for 50% or less of fair market value. I think it's easier to look at that when you look at it as a scattered site, as far as a minimum of at least 20% of the sites are donated.
And so that one is actually, I was just looking at the IP, so that's on page 3 of the of attachment B. And then back to Wendy's question about the appraisal. The appraisal must be no older than 6 months prior to the date of the closing or transfer. And it must be included if the property was purchased within 5 years prior to the opening of the AHP round and an appraisal was not required. The market value may be based on the tax assessment value at the time of purchase. And then there are documentation requirements for both of these. And so that starts on page 2 of attachment B in the implementation plan.
Can I ask another follow-up question?
Sure.
So on that same point, so then if you're getting a 40% discount from the seller, you don't get any points?
If that's the entire, yeah, if that's the property that you're getting at a 40% discount, correct, it has to be 50%.
Okay. And then if you've got 5 lots and one of them is donated, then you've achieved the 20% minimum.
Well, it'll be by lot size, so it can't be like a postage stamp and then the other 4 lots are huge.
Okay. But then you're multiplying that by 5%. So formula 5x the percent donated.
5 points. I believe that's how the formula goes.
Yeah, the 5 is indicative of the points for that category. So you're going to get a percentage of those 5 points if not the entire initiative was donated. So if that one lot maximizes you're over 20% of the land for the whole project, then you will get a portion of the points. So that 5 is indicative of the points that you can get on that category. And then it's going to be the percentage of the land for the whole project that was donated.
Yeah.
So if 20% was donated, we're going to multiply that 20% by the 5 points to give you your actual points for the project.
There are only 5 points total, right?
Yeah, but it's a variable category. So you'd get 1 point.
I'm just confused by the math. How is 5 times 20% just 1 point?
Did I do that right in my head?
Oh, because you're multiplying by the percent. I got it.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, so it would be 1 point there.
I was thinking it was 100% because you're multiplying 5 times 20% to 100% points. But okay, I got you. 5 times 0.2. Okay.
I see another question in here that was written in. Do I understand correctly that 65,000 is the max per rental unit for which you can apply for, say, supportive housing? So that's the max for to earn points in the category. If your cost is greater than $65,000 per unit, that's fine. It's just that you're going to get 0 for subsidy per unit. So it's not a disqualifying action to go over the 65,000. It will eliminate you from points in that category.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions here, but please know that the 4 of us are available to you to answer any questions, to go over any specifics you may have on your project. We will make sure that we add our emails for Thursday's webinar for feasibility.
And we'll also for feasibility too, we'll put up we can probably load this presentation onto the feasibility materials. We'll also have the templates available for that. We'll put the empowerment templates up there, the sponsor statement of obligations, along with the community land trust template. So you can have all of those ahead of time and ready to go. It'll save you from having to email us for those. All right. Looks like that's it for questions, unless anybody has a hand raised that I'm not seeing.
No, we're all set with the hands.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We went a little bit over, but we appreciate the questions. It's always helpful to have these, whether or not it's your own question or you're just listening to other people. Sometimes it helps you along. So these are helpful for everybody, and we really appreciate it. So again, if you have any other questions, you can bring them along to Thursday's webinar or reach out to us, and we're happy to talk through them. And if you have not signed up for Thursday's webinar, please go ahead and do so. It'll be really important to go through that. It's the second half of the application, and we'll get everybody the information that they need to be off and running on June 1st. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day.